Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Friends, Namaste and a hearty welcome to one and all for today's 46th session of DISHA. DISHA, a series aimed to lead us into an inward journey for discovery of inner strength and happiness. Today, our Param Vedanta teacher, Srimati Jyotirmayi Karthik, shall explain about Bhakti Yoga from two texts. One, from chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita, Virāt devotees and the benefits of Virāt Bhakti. And two, from Tatva bodha, under Bhakti Yoga, the subtopic, second meaning of Bhakti, a course of discipline. This presentation is followed by a teaching quiz to be presented by Dr. Sandhya Ravi. Srimati Mamata will commence today's session by chanting and explaining Namami Isham Ishana Nirvana Rupam, the first verse of Rudrashtakam. And Dr. Hegde sir shall be giving us an introduction on the topic. Srimati Mamata, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Rudrashtakam is a great hymn composed by poet Tulsidas on Lord Shiva. The lyrics of this popular hymn highlight several qualities of the Lord. This divine stotram is also popular with its lyrics of the first verse, Namamisha Mishana Nirvana Rupa. Chanting the verse, Namamisha Mishana Nirvana Rupam Vibhum Vyapakam Brahma Veda Swarupam Nijam Nirgunam Nirvikalpam Niriham Chidakashamakasha Vasam Bhajeham. In the next slide, Namamisha Mishana. I salute the Ishanya facing Lord Isha. Isha, Ishana are other names of Lord Shiva, who is Nirvana Rupam, whose form represents the state of moksha, that is, extinction of all desires and passions leading to the highest bliss, Satchidananda Rupa. Vibhum Vyapakam, who manifests taking a form, though in essence he is pervading everywhere, and is Brahma Veda Swarupam. His form embodies the highest knowledge of Brahman present in the core of the Vedas. In the next slide, the Lord Ishana, who is Nijam, in his own self, which is Nirgunam, that is beyond the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, Nirvikalpam, which is beyond any vikalpas or changes, Niriham, which is free from desires, Chidakasham, is all-pervading Chit, Chaitanyam or the consciousness principle, like the all-pervading Akasha or sky, and Akasha Vasam, that is Akasha Vastra Rupam, Bhajeham, I worship that Ishana. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you, Mamta, for giving us an introduction to a very beautiful work, Rudrashtakam. Tulsidas is known for his composition on Ramayana, but this is a composition on Lord Shiva. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Pariyantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. As in our regular Bhagavad Gita classes, we have come to the conclusion in the 18th chapter, and in DISHA we have completed 50% now in the 10th chapter. In each of these introductions, I will touch on certain fundamental topics of Vedanta. And today I would choose to speak on what is this triangular format and why we should move from the triangular to the binary format. I will not touch on binary format in this class, but I will try to explain what is this triangular format. There are three words, and as we are students of Jnana Yoga, these technical terms need to be absolutely clear. And once they are clear, our understanding of the scriptures become more easy. What do you mean by Sat? What is meant by Mithya? And what is meant by Asat? The word Sat means that which is existent, and existent always. Always means that which is present in all three periods of time. Tatva bodha defines it as Trikalapi tishtati iti Sat, that which is there in waking, dream, deep sleep. For example, this world disappears and my body awareness disappears during deep sleep, and therefore this world and my body does not come under the definition of Sat. What is Asat? Asat is that which is not existent. And generally, that which is non-existent does not create any problems. In Vedanta, they give an example of, for example, the horn on the head of a rabbit. Rabbits never have a horn. So the word Asat means that which is not existent. Now, we have prayers like Asatoma Sadgamaya. What is the meaning of the word Asat there? The word Asat should be inferred as Mithya, that which appears to exist. The word Mithya means that which is similar to Asat because it is really not existent, but it appears to exist. Examples are a mirage or our famous rope snake, the rope that is imagined on a snake. In reality, it is not existent, but it appears to exist. And because it appears to exist, it can create as much problems. So really in our prayers, when we say Asato ma sadgamaya, we actually mean from what appears to be real, take me to that which is real. And therefore, what is non-existent is usually not a problem. So let us be clear about these terms. Sat, which is there in all three periods of time. Asat, which is not existed. Mithya, which is there, let's say, in waking and dream, but disappears in deep sleep. There is another term, avidya, we should be very clear. Normally, avidya is translated as ignorance. Ignorance is bliss. For example, in darkness or in deep sleep, there is no problem. In complete ignorance, there is no problem. The problem is when there is incomplete knowledge. We know about the rope snake example. There is partial light and there is partial darkness. That means it is around twilight. I'm seeing something, but I'm not sure what it is. And my fertile imagination projects something fearful on what looks like what is a rope? I see a snake on it. Now, what is avidya in our context? When we come to the level of human consciousness, I know I am. About I am very clear. But what I am, I do not know. I do not know my true nature. I do not know I am that. And that is why avidya creates all these problems. Whenever there is avidya, avidya leads to adhyasa. Adhyasa means error. I know I am, but I do not know my true nature. And therefore, this leads to identification with the body. And the body and mind are always limited. And because of these limitations, we get into what is called a hridaya granthi. What is this hridaya granthi? The knot of the heart. It is the triad of avidya, kama, karma. I do not know my true nature. And because I do not know my true nature, a desire arises in me that if I'm able to accomplish something, then I will be happy. Therefore, we have avidya, kama, and karma. Now, whenever there is an error, an adhyasa, when I identify with my limited body mind, I have an awareness of this limited entity which I call jiva, the subject, the one who is experiencing this world. And because of limitations, we feel frustrated and helpless. And this is what is called ahankara. What is the cause of my frustration? It is the world of my experience. The word jagat here means the world of my experiences. Everything else which is other than me, technically including my body and mind. If there is me and the world, the human mind will evaluate there must be an Ishvara or God. The human intellect always looks for a cause. And because of the cause, there is a third entity called Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. And Vedanta says this division or this triad is the cause of all problems. As you will see, Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara are interdependent. Both of them are available in the waking stage and dream stage, but they are not there in the deep sleep stage. And because they are not there in all the three stages, Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara will come under the category of Mithya, because it is available there in one state and it is not there in all three, and therefore cannot come under the category of Sat. Now, how do I eliminate duality? Moksha is possible only when this triad of Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara is eliminated, and this can be accomplished by finding out what is the root cause. And the root cause is ignorance, and ignorance can be solved only by knowledge. It is not Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara which is the cause of samsara. It is my ignorance. And Vedanta has several methods of being able to take out, and these are called the prakriyas. Through this prakriya, through various Mahavakya Vichara, it helps us to discover that I am none of these, although I appear to be the Jiva, experience the Jagat and Ishvara. Solution for my problems come when I move to the binary format. Once through Guru and Shastra, I understand my true nature as Atma, Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara do not disappear, but they come under the category of something that I can experience as Mithya, just like the discovery of gold in bangle, chain, and ring. With this little background, we will come to the DISHA topic today, which is in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where we understand that Vibhuti is the ability to see God in the world. Now, it has to sensitize us to see divinity in the world. And this is a stepping stone for Vishwarupa Ishvara, which will help me to see the whole world as God. Vishwarupa Ishvara itself is a stepping stone to the discovery of the formless or Arupa Ishvara. And therefore, one of the things I need to work on is I dislike this, I hate this, I can't stand this, because everything is Bhagwan or Ishvara alone. This is a Shiva Sutra verse which says Vismayaha Yoga Bhumika. Shiva is teaching Parvati, and one of the opening verses is, if you have those childlike eyes of wonderment, that is the foundation of Vismayaha Yoga Bhumika, the foundation to spirituality. And if you are like small children, you will be able to see the Vibhuti. You will be able to see divinity. And that is what is the topic for today's class. Jyoti, please.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I will be talking about, I will be speaking on the 3 shlokas of chapter 10, shlokas 8 to 11, and the Tatva bodha, Bhakti Yoga, which also deals with virāt rupa and explains through Bhakti. In chapter 10, we are introduced to the Bhakti Yoga, or which is actually the Madhyama Shatka of the Gita. Beginning from the 7th chapter of the Gita, the Lord has been primarily dealing with Ishvara Swarupam, or the nature of God. This is a topic progressively developed by Sri Krishna up to the 12th chapter. In chapters 7, 8, and 9, Lord Krishna defines God as Jagat Karanam, the cause of the universe. And Krishna also talks about the nature of God, pointing out that God consists of 2 aspects, the Paraprakriti, or the higher nature, and the Aparaprakriti, or the lower nature. Paraprakriti is of the nature of consciousness, and the Aparaprakriti is of the nature of matter. Thus, basic matter principle plus the consciousness principle put together is God. In this chapter named Vibhuti Yoga, Lord Krishna also expounds on the common features and the differences of the para and apara prakriti, such as neither consciousness and matter have a beginning. Both can never be created, so Ishvara has no beginning. Consciousness is not subject to change. It is nirvikara, whereas matter is perpetually changing, or it is savikara. To become this universe, it is constantly changing. Matter is also subject to evolution as well as involution, which is folding back into its fundamental form. Consciousness has no attributes. It is nirguna, and therefore it is not available for scientific study. Matter is full of attributes, saguna tattva. Consciousness is satyam, having independent existence, whereas matter is mithya or paratantra, whose existence is dependent on consciousness. Next slide, please. Our scriptures give three definitions of God, depending on the maturity of the seeker and the intellectual caliber of the seeker. God is responsible for the emergence of the universe, meaning Jagat Karanam. And the understanding of Karanam status is generally done in three stages, depending on the maturity of the student. In the first stage, God is the creator of the world, an intelligent cause or nimitta karanam. The student at this stage assumes that God is a person. If this creation is purposeful and well-designed, there must be an intelligent creator behind it, and that is the Jagat Karta or Ishvara. Therefore, the student imagines a very intelligent God who is omniscient, omnipotent, and since we don't see him around, we safely place him somewhere above the clouds. This is a personal God with a special name, such as Rama, Krishna, Vishnu, or Shiva. This is Ekarupa Ishvara, and the student here is called a Manda Adhikari or a Manda Bhakta. In the next stage, as the student starts to mature, he wonders where the infinite God is located and from where he gets the material to create the world. Since God is the consciousness as well as the principle, he uses the material form from within himself. God now is the Karanam, the very material out of which the world is created, just as a spider finds a material for a web out of itself. So here the understanding evolves from God creates the universe to God manifests as the universe. The whole cosmos is the avatar of the Lord. Lord is no more Ekarupa Ishvara, but is Aneka Rupa Ishvara or Vishwarupa Ishvara, and he is available everywhere. This results in the divination of the universe, and God is then called the Vishwarupa Ishvara. At this stage, the student is a Madhyama Adhikari or a Madhyama Bhakta. In the third stage or the highest level here, the student recognizes that the Lord does not even manifest as the world because he is changeless. God does not create the universe. God does not become the universe because becoming means undergoing change. God apparently appears as the universe now. Jagat Adhishtanam Ishvara, God as a substratum of world. And since God transcends all superficial forms of creation, no particular form belongs to God. Therefore, that God is Arupa Ishvara or formless God. Therefore, the universe is a false manifestation of the Lord, and it is in this stage alone that we say that the universe is unreal. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. We move into the explanation of the three shlokas. With the previous shloka, the topic of Ishvara Swarupam is over. And Krishna talks about Aneka Rupa Ishvara Bhakta, those devotees who are in the intermediary level and anchored on Aneka Rupa Ishvara or Vishwarupa here from the 8th shloka. This Vishwarupa Bhakti gives a lot of benefits to the students as he enjoys a lot of virtues. Because the change in him in becoming a Madhyama Adhikari is that Raga Dvesha will weaken. Likes and dislikes are purely because of categorization of the world as favorable and unfavorable. Once the student knows that the whole creation is the manifestation of the Lord, how can he dislike one part of God and like another part? Everything is divine. So the whole creation is divine. And therefore, everything is welcome to me. A Vishwarupa Bhakta, Vishwarupa Ishvara Bhakta worships Ishvara with the understanding that he is the source of everything. Everything proceeds from Ishvara and therefore it is Ishvara Prasada. This non-resistance to experiences is called Prasada Buddhi. And it is the healthiest attitude because whatever experiences occur is considered as a choiceless situation. About the future, I can try to change experiences. About the present, I cannot change them because they have already arrived. So past is a choiceless stage, and so is the present. We have a choice only regarding the future. So Krishna says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavaha. For this Virat Bhakta, the Lord is the source of everything. Pleasure, pain, association, disassociation, birth, death, health, disease, success, failure. Everything has got only one source, and that is Aham, which is Vishwarupa Ishvara. And therefore only Sarvam Matta Pravartate. Everything proceeds from me. I am the source of everything, and everything proceeds from me. Knowing thus, the wise ones who are endowed with devotion worship me. They are not aware of the Nirguna Ishvara, but Vishwarupa Ishvara they know, and therefore they are called Buddhaha. Bhava Samanvitaha, wise men soaked in devotion. That is the meaning of the 8th shloka. Those whose minds are in me, whose living is resolved in me, teaching one another and always talking about me, they are ever satisfied and they revel always. This is the meaning of the 9th shloka. Fixing the mind and senses on me, mutually sharing the knowledge about me and speaking of me, they are always contented and delighted, says Krishna in the shloka. Matchitta are those whose minds are fixed upon me, who is God. Madgata prana are those whose organs have all become drawn into me, enlightening each other about me in the company of the learned through Vedic texts. That is, among equals, they enlighten each other. And to those who are inferior, such wise men instruct about me. They derive satisfaction, and as a result, they rejoice. They experience great joy. The Vishwarupa Bhaktas see only the Lord in their experiences. It is not through physical eyes, but through their refined minds, they are able to discern the greatness of the creation. Vishwarupa Bhaktas have the following characteristics. With their mind and sense organs fixed on Ishvara, they mutually discuss and share their divine experiences with the like-minded. They always speak of the Lord. They transmit this attitude to their children and the next generations with the intention of elevating their mind to see what is not physically perceptible, but what can be appreciated only by a mature mind. They not only appreciate the Lord this way always, but also revel in him. It is not necessary for them to drop their worldly duties, but through their sensitized mind, they appreciate Ishvara while still engaged in their duties. Next slide, please. For those who are always committed to me, seeking me with love, I give that vision whereby they reach me. This is the 10th shloka. Such bhaktas are satata yuktanam. So their life is ever connected to me. They never forget their relationship with me. In and through their relationships with other people, they never forget their relationship. They see the relationship with me through other relationships as well. That is what is meant. For example, a wave has a fundamental relationship with the ocean because it arises from the ocean. The relationship of this wave with another wave is incidental and transient and lasts only during the time that they travel together. The Vishwarupa Bhakta understands that his relationship with Ishvara is fundamental and universal, and other relationships, although sacred, are transient. This relationship with Ishvara is not maintained by external compulsion, but with love born of understanding. The more you study the scriptures, the more you know the nature of God. The more you know the nature of God, devotion is automatic. No will is required. Therefore, bhajatam priti purvakam. And this bhakti also has got several levels. Initially, I look upon God as a means for worldly ends. That is the lowest form of love. The next one is learning to look upon Lord as an end in itself, because God represents Purnatvam. And once I know that, I understand that my goal of life is self-fulfillment or self-sufficiency. This is called Madhyama Bhakti. Avyabhicharani Bhakti, and it is also the Bhakti that these people enjoy through Priti Purvakam, which means they look upon the God as goal itself. Now, Bhagavan says, I will also help them, such people, such bhaktas, by taking them to the next stage of sadhana, where they have progressed from Ekarupa Bhakti and Anekarupa Bhakti. Therefore, Krishna says, I will take them from Anekarupa to Arupa Ishvara, Virat Ishvara to Nirguna Brahma. And how to arrive at Nirguna Brahma? Only through one method, and that is called Jnana Yoga. And Jnana Yoga means what? It is the discovery of formless God. So Buddhi Yogam Aham Dadami. Vedanta Shravana Manana Nididhyasanam Aham Dadami. This is indirectly what Krishna is saying. Krishna promises to take these bhaktas to the next level of knowledge of Arupa Ishvara. He will provide the conditions such as Guru, Shastras, and the qualifications required for Gnana Yoga and Gnana itself. In the 11th shloka, Krishna says, for such bhaktas alone, out of compassion, I, obtaining in the thought of their mind, destroy the delusion born of ignorance by the shining lamp of knowledge. Sri Krishna says here, I will light the lamp of wisdom in the mind of the Virat Bhakta. Wisdom means Ishvara Gnana. And what type of Ishvara? Not Ekarupa or Anekarupa, but Arupa Nirguna Ishvara Gnanam, or Aham Brahmasmi Iti Gnanam. That is the lamp that I will light in their mind. The only method for giving such knowledge, material or spiritual, is through consistent and systematic teaching. This teaching continues until every doubt is removed. For Arjuna, when he was ready, Krishna himself became the teacher through systematic communication. And all because of my compassion, says Krishna, Anukampa means compassion, I will provide an acharya. I will make the student learn systematically. I will make him go through Shravana Manana Nididhyasana and thus light the lamp. All these will be done by remaining in the student's own mind. So Atma Bhava, which means in the student's mind. Bhavastha Gnanadipena Bhasvata. Initially, when the lamp is lit, the flame is feeble. One must protect it. Once the flame becomes big, there is no need to protect or nurture it. It will burn any fuel added to it. Tamaha Nashyami. I will remove the darkness in the mind, which is born of ignorance. In short, this Virat Bhakta will become a Brahmagnani. And without becoming a Brahmagnani, there is no question of moksha at all. So these verses in this chapter are important because many people try to circumvent the Gnana route and try to reach the Lord through Bhakti alone. Bhagavan clearly says there is no such shortcut. You must gain knowledge, and he becomes Brahmagnani with the assistance and support of the Lord. With this, the three shlokas are explained and the Virat Bhakta's characteristics are explained. Moving to Tatva Bodha's explanation of Bhakti Yoga, the word Bhakti is used in the scriptures in two different meanings. One is Bhakti as devotion towards God. And devotion is nothing but love directed towards a higher principle. So when love is directed towards some principle which we revere, which is sacred, then that love is devotion. Now, such love has been very elaborately analyzed in our scriptures, both in its general form and also in its specific form as love of God. Scriptures point out that all forms of love that a human being entertains is directed only towards three things. Love towards goals. The first is whatever goals that we want to accomplish in our life, whatever ends that we want to accomplish are all ends that we love. Love towards means. We find that to accomplish the ends, we have to use various means. Only through the means can we accomplish the end. And since the means are useful to accomplish the end, we begin to love the means as well. Now, the third is love towards oneself. Here, the object of love is the love of oneself. Everyone loves himself or herself, and this is also called self-love. Our scriptures point out that there is a gradation in the intensity of love in the above three forms. If we are to grade means love, or God only as the means for various worldly ends, is called Manda. Ends love, or choosing God as the goal of life, because God represents security, peace, happiness, this is Madhyama. And the self-love is even more a rare form of love, the most intense form of love in which I look upon God as non-different from myself. Soham Asmi means that the Lord is essentially not different from me, and therefore the Lord and the self are identical. God love will become equal to self-love. Here, this is Uttama. This is the Uttama stage because this is the highest in intensity. For the Manda Bhakta, God is dear. For Madhyama Bhakta, God is dearer. And for the Uttama Bhakta, God is the dearest. The second meaning of Bhakti, which is what is linked to the Virata Bhakta, it is a course of discipline to achieve the spiritual goal, the ultimate goal of liberation. To convey this idea of bhakti as a course of discipline, generally the word yoga is added. So when bhakti becomes a course of discipline, we say bhakti yoga, which is meant for accomplishing a goal. Earlier, we dealt with course of discipline for attaining purushartha, such as artha, kama, moksha, etc. We never talked about bhakti yoga. So now the question is, what then is exactly bhakti? Is it a fourth yoga? No, bhakti yoga is not an exclusive or separate course of discipline at all. Bhakti is the name of all groups of discipline consisting of all the three, which is karma yoga, upasana yoga, and jnana yoga. The first stage of bhakti yoga is karma yoga. The second stage of bhakti yoga is upasana yoga, and the third stage of bhakti yoga is jnana yoga. When we talk about bhakti, it is love or devotion towards God. Without understanding the principle of God, this is the first meaning. So without understanding the principle of God, how can we discuss the topic of devotion? Because an integral part of love is the object of love itself. In fact, you cannot develop love towards anyone without understanding what it is. How can someone love an unknown thing or person? That is why jnanam of God becomes a necessity. Our scriptures give three definitions of God depending on the maturity of the seeker and the intellectual caliber of the seeker. Jagat Karta Ishvara, God as the creator, which was explained earlier in the Vibhuti Yoga of chapter 10. Jagat Karanam Ishvara, God as the cause of the world. Jagat Adishtanam Ishvara, God as the substratum of the world. This is the understanding of God that develops in the mind of the seeker as he studies the scriptures. To consolidate, we have discussed 9 forms of bhakti. The first 3 are Manda Bhakti, Madhyama Bhakti, and Uttama Bhakti, where bhakti is based on the love of God. Bhavana Drishtaya Bhakti Trayam. Then we saw Karma Yoga Rupa Bhakti, Upasana Yoga Rupa Bhakti, and Jnana Yoga Rupa Bhakti, where bhakti is from the standpoint of sadhana. Sadhana Drishtaya Bhakti Trayam. Then we saw Ekarupa Bhakti, Anekarupa Bhakti, and Arupa Bhakti, depending on my understanding of God. Devata Drishtya Bhakti Trayam. This is the conclusion of Bhakti Yoga and Vibhuti Yoga. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Jyoti, for an excellent explanation of the selected verses of the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Each verse was very clearly explained. And you also explained to us about the significance of bhakti, because all these verses that were selected show that if you have devotion to the Lord, then it is Sri Krishna's prerogative to see how we can attain to Parama Purushartha or Moksha through Guru and Shastra. It is the Lord who will be able to provide you the teacher and the teaching, and will help us to experience fulfillment in our lives. One thing is certain to all of us, and this is what we have learned through the grace of our acharyas. I know I am. I am conscious. I am existent. This I don't need anybody else to say. That I am conscious, I can experience the world. I am existent. This I don't need anybody else to prove. So this much knowledge I have. But what do I have? I have incomplete knowledge. And what is the incomplete knowledge? I experience a world also as existent. I see the world around me as not me. And I see this world is vast and limitless. And I see myself as limitation. The moment we wake up, because of this half knowledge and half ignorance, there is the body identification. I experience limitations because I have awareness of time, I have awareness of space, I have awareness of body, and I feel limited. And what is my want? I want to be limitless. The teachers, through our scriptures, say we are limitless. The next question is, there is a disparity between my experience of my limitations and what do the scriptures say. So is it ever possible to experience limitlessness? The teachers say experience of limitlessness is not possible, even though we are limitless. because of the upadhi. The upadhi means the moment I wake up or the moment I become aware, I have to use my mind. Awareness is always there, but waking up happens when the mind becomes, and the mind being an instrument has certain limitations. And because of the limitations, although that consciousness, I am Atma, I am Brahma, that I am Atma, Brahma, functioning through this limited body mind, I experience limitations in time, limitations in space, and limitations in my experiences. So if I really analyze where is this limitation, these limitations are all because of the mind. How do I overcome these limitations? I will not be able to overcome it by myself. That is where bhakti comes in. And what is the role of bhakti? Bhakti helps us from Ekarupa Bhakti. I begin to see divinity in the world. That is what we are seeing through this Vibhuti Yoga and Vishwarupa. Part of my sadhana is total acceptance of everything. I cannot reject anything because everything that I experience is Bhagavan himself. And the more I understand that everything I experience is none other than Ishvara as manifesting, and this is what is called the stepping stone to Arupa Bhakti. Now, because everything is divine, what is my sadhana? I need to be able to welcome everything without resistance. And when there is no resistance, there is no stress. And I'm able to accept God's will. So let me experience, therefore, in and through every transaction, let me be able to see the presence of the Lord. And the presence of the Lord makes me so sensitive to be able to appreciate everything as divine. This sensitization of the mind is what we require. Krishna has promised us, Tesham, to such a bhakta who Satatam Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam Dadami Buddhi Yogam, and to such a person he is able to give us Jnana Yoga. If we have understood today's class, we will be able to answer this teaching quiz, and this teaching quiz will be conducted by Dr. Sandhya Ravi. Dr. Sandhya, please.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So we've seen in verses 10.8 to 11, the mode of worship that is practiced by the wise devotees who have exclusive love for God, and also the fruit of such worship. All that was beautifully explained by the speaker. So the questions are based on these 4 verses. In verse 10.8, which says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattaha sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. Krishna explains how through devotion a Vishwarupa Bhakta becomes an Advaita Jnani by God's grace. So in this verse, what is the phrase used for a Vishwarupa Bhakta?
It is Buddha Bhava Samanvita.
Yes, correct. So the word Buddha, which is qualified by Bhava Samanvita, the adjective, it stands for those enlightened devotees who are full of exclusive love, who have unflinching faith, who are solely devoted to God and have full knowledge of his virtues and glories. So these are the wise ones which are endowed with devotion. Moving on to the next question. The same verse, which says, Sarvasya Prabhavo Mattaha Sarvam Pravartate. What does it indicate? Does it say that we do not react to choiceless situations, or we cannot reject any experience because it is choiceless? Or is it that I am the witness in every experience? Or is it all the 3?
It appears to be all of the above.
Yes, correct. Because we are talking about the Vishwarupa Bhakta or the Virāt Bhakta, for whom who recognizes the Lord as the source of everything. So in everything there is Ishvara Prasada Bhava. That is, he becomes the ideal Karma Yoga. Moving on to the next question. So here we just take a step back and look at verse 30 in chapter 3 and compare it with verse 9 in chapter 10. Both these verses have a common message about a karma yogi and a Vishwarupa bhakta. What is it? It's quite a popular verse in chapter 3. Mai sarvani karmani samyasya adhyatma chetasa nirashi nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatadjvaraha. And verse 10.9 is Machchita matgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha. So what are the key words that you can pick out from these two verses which convey a common message about a karma yogi and a Vishwarupa bhakta?
So it appears to be in every action, he has the Ishvara Prasada Bhava dedication. And he remembers the Lord in every experience.
Correct. So in verse 3.30, the key word is Adhyatma Chetasa, which stands for the mind which has developed faith in God. So it's an attitude of self-surrender, thy will be done attitude in all the work. Same is conveyed by the words Machchita, which means deeply engrossed, mind fixed on God, and Madgata Prana, where there is an attitude of complete surrender. So in every action, there is Ishvara Prasad Bhava dedication. So the person remembers Lord in every experience and his mind is always anchored in the Lord. Moving on to the next question. So this was actually beautifully explained by Jyoti. In verse 10.9, we've often heard this quote, great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. So in the context of Vishwarupa Bhaktas getting together, sharing ideas, which are the words that you can pick out from this verse to convey this thought?
Bodhayanta Paraspara.
Correct. So Bodhayanta Parasparam is, like we said, those who have the knowledge, revel in it, who like to share, they mutually share the glory of the Lord. They don't engage in petty conversation, but it's always discussing the glories of the Lord. Bodhayanta Parasparam, mutually sharing. Moving on to the next question. So we move on to verse 10.10. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. So Bhagavan here assures the Vishwarupa Bhaktas that wherever bhakti is there, I will help them attain jnanam and later they merge into me. So what are the assuring words which he says?
The second line, Dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te.
Yeah. So he says, I will give you that wisdom through your devotion, which will make you see the unchanging Atma in an ever-changing world. And Swamiji says, Swami Paramarthanandaji says, that this wisdom of Ishvara Sambandham is the Thampura Shruti in the background. It should always be there in our thoughts. That kind of a devotion is what, it becomes the prerogative, as Dr. Hegde said, for the God to grant us this wisdom. Moving on to the next question. So the same verse, Te mam upayanti. That means he says the devotees will come to me or merge into me. So when we read this or study this, what kind of a merger are we thinking about? Is it a physical merger, or is it an intellectual event, or is it unwavering devotion?
Unwavering devotion.
Yes. So of course it is not a physical merger. It begins as an intellectual event, but through unwavering bhakti, we are able to attain jnana. Moving on to the next question. That is verse 11 now. Tesham eva anukampartam aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayami atma bhavasto jnana deepena bhasvata. So Bhagavan imparts Buddhi Yoga, Jnana Yoga to his bhaktas, to the devoted bhaktas. And this happens because of two of the grace of God, basically. What are the two words which denote this in this verse?
Anukampa and Atma Bhavasta.
Correct. So Anukampa, here the Lord conveys that the devotee need not do any other sadhana beyond total surrender. And it is that compassion of the Lord which grants us this grace of knowledge. And Atma Bhavasta, how does this happen? He constantly resides in the heart of the devotee as the controller. And yet we do not feel his presence because, as we will see in the next verse, it's because of that ignorance. But a completely devoted person, because of Anukampa and Atma Bhavasta of God, is able to attain Buddhi Yogam and Jnana Yoga. The next question, please. So in verse 11, again, this Jnana Deepena Bhasvata, this lamp of knowledge, it's qualified by the word Bhasvata. It's not just lighting a lamp, it is a brilliant lamp, it is a shining lamp. And how is this brilliance attained?
Through Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana.
Yes, as it was well explained by Jyoti, the Lord lights the lamp. And at that time, Shravanam, he gives us this opportunity through a guru, through the opportunity to study the scriptures. It is feeble. But then we have to protect it, make it, through Manana, make it stronger, through Nididhyasana, becomes a conflagration and brilliant, when nothing will obliterate it. So Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam is what will make the lamp brilliant. Moving on to the next. So we are talking about Lord granting knowledge, Jnana Yoga, through his compassion and by being present in the mind of the devotee. But there is an obstacle between Bhakta and Bhagavan which has to be removed. What is this obstacle?
It is Tamaha, darkness, which is born of Ajnanam.
Correct. So we say Tesham eva anukampartam aham ajnanajam tamaha. Tamaha is the darkness which is born of ignorance. Ignorance is the obstacle, and that we think that we are different from Bhagavan, and this is removed by the light of knowledge. Next slide, please. So here we are looking at verses 7, 8, 9, and 10, because as we have seen, Krishna repeatedly speaks about the kind of devotion that is required for divine grace to be bestowed. It is no ordinary bhakti that he is talking about. So can you pick out the words which qualify this kind of bhakti in each of these verses? We've gone through it several times, so I won't read out the verse. You can just pick out the names, the words from each of this verse. In verse 7, it is?
Yeah, in verse 7, it is Avikampena.
Avikampena. In verse 8?
Bhava Samanvita.
Yes. And in verse 9?
Mattu Chitta and Madhakatta Prana.
And verse 10, it is?
Satata Yuktana.
So all these words qualify the kind of devotion that is required to, get God's grace. So Avikampena is unwavering. Bhava Samanvita is endowed with great faith and devotion. Machita is those with minds fixed on the Lord. Madgata Prana, where they withdraw their senses and inwards and surrender their lives completely to God. And Satata Yuktanam is ever steadfast and anchored in the Lord. So that completes the Bhagavad Gita shloka, the questions on the Bhagavad Gita shloka. Now move on to Tatva bodha. Again, very clearly presented by Jyoti, so it should be so easy. The scriptures point out that all forms of love that a human being entertains is directed only to three things. They are
love of ends, love of means, and love of oneself.
Correct. So here, as we have already heard, I love the explanation is that we love so many ends, and not for the sake of the end itself, but because for our benefit. And we love various ends, hoping that they will give us peace, security, happiness, etc. And to meet these ends, we have to use various means. So we begin to love the means also. Then the third category, as the Uttama Bhakti, is the love of oneself. Because in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, sage Yajnavalkya says, Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Everything is loved for one's sake only. The next question. Bhakti Yoga includes
Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Upasana Yoga.
Correct. So again, as was explained earlier, it is not an exclusive discipline in itself, but it forms the substratum upon which these three yogas are practiced. So Karma Yoga is Ishvara Arpana Bhava and Prasada Bhava. Upasana Yoga is I have to meditate upon the Lord to gain mental discipline and integration. And Jnana Yoga is discovering that we are our real nature and that we are not different from the nature of God. So it is a journey in self-discovery. So Swamiji, again, it's worth revisiting what he has said. He says that Karma Yoga has to be imbued with Bhakti. Upasana Yoga should be soaked in Bhakti. And Jnana Yoga must float in the syrup of Bhakti like a rasagulla. Moving on to the next. So these are the threefold course of disciplines for attaining moksha. Question 13. Again, Pujya Swami Paramarthananda has described 9 forms of bhakti. So we look at it from different angles. From the Bhavana Drishtya, they are
Manda Bhakti, Madhyama Bhakti, and Uttama Bhakti.
So we've already heard the description of this very clearly. That is correct. The next question. From the Sadhana Drishtya, it is?
Karma Yoga Rupa Bhakti, Upasana Yoga Rupa Bhakti, and Jnana Yoga Rupa Bhakti.
Correct. And then from the next question, from the Devata Drishtya Bhakti Trayam.
Yes, it's Eka Rupa Bhakti, Aneka Rupa Bhakti, and Arupa Bhakti.
Yes, correct. Next question. So, again, this was explained by both Dr. Hegde and Jyoti. Understanding of God in relation with world in 3 stages. As we progress in our spiritual path, what are the 3 stages?
Jagat Karta, then it's Jagat Karana, and last is Jagat Adhisthana.
Correct. So the devotee in his spiritual progress first realizes that God creates the world and looks upon him as Jagat Karta. Then he realizes that God is everywhere. God becomes the world, Jagat Karanam, and then realizes that God is the Adhishtanam. He is the Jagat Adhishtanam. Thank you very much, Dr. Rekha. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Mamta, for chanting and explaining the divine shloka. Thank you, Srimati Jyotirmayi Karthik, for your wonderful presentation. Thank you, Dr. Sandhya, Ravi, and team for the teaching quiz. A quiz aimed to remind us and emphasize the key aspects of today's topic. Hearty thanks to Dr. Timappa Hegde sir for the introduction and recapping the important points of today's topics under discussion. More importantly, thank you, friends, for your active participation. Remember to log in on Friday at 6:45 p.m. sharp for our verse-by-verse session 135 on 17th February 23 to continue study of the Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter. Dhanyavada and Shubhratri. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.